The wind was merciless that night, tearing through the torn sails of the Fertina Yelesi like the claws of some ancient beast. Lightning carved the sky into 1,000 jagged shards, and rain battered the deck like the fists of angry gods. Yet, at the helm stood a man unmoved, Captain Joe, known across the 7 seas as Kara Akbaba, the Black Vulture. His eyes, sharp as broken glass, were fixed not on the storm ahead but on the horizon beyond it. Somewhere out there lay the Altan Kaelikler, the golden reefs, and hidden within their crystalline labyrinths was a treasure not measured in gold or jewels, but in legend, the Tidal Stone, said to hold the power to command the seas themselves. But Joe wasn't seeking the stone just for power or wealth. He was seeking her, Lisa, the mermaid princess of the lost kingdom of the Coral Deep, a creature of myth to most, but not to him. They had met once before, a fleeting glimpse during a quiet dawn, when Joe's ship drifted listlessly near the Whispering Shoals. But his heart wasn't the only one drawn to Lisa. Far away, aboard the dread vessel, the Iron Widow, Wildemir Pence, Joe's former brother-in-arms, turned sworn enemy, stood with hands clasped behind his back, eyes scanning the same storm Joe sailed through. "He's coming for her," Will said to his first mate, Crag, a mountain of muscle who had once snapped a mast in half with his bare hands. "Let him come," Crag growled. "We'll drown him before he reaches the reefs." Will's lips curled into a smile. "Oh, we'll let him reach them, but he'll wish he hadn't." Joe's crew were as unique as the barnacles on the ship's hull. Finn, the cartographer, could read ocean currents like pages of a book. Rico, a former gladiator, could swing a cutlass with the strength of 10 men. Tilly, a young inventor, had wired the ship with traps and mechanisms no pirate could dream of. And Boren, the quiet sentinel, could hear a knife unsheathed from across the ship. Together, they had survived sea beasts, naval fleets, and mutiny. But none had prepared them for the haunting beauty of Lisa's song. It came again, 3 nights. After the storm, soft and shimmering like moonlight on water, Joe stood at the bow, eyes searching the sea. When she emerged, Lisa, her hair flowed like kelp in the current, her eyes deep as ocean trenches. She spoke, not in words, but in thoughts, a magic the merfolk shared. "Why do you seek me, pirate?" "Because I remember," Joe whispered, "your voice, your sorrow, and because Will is coming." Lisa's expression darkened. "He wants the stone. He thinks it will make him king of the oceans. But the stone has a heart. It chooses, and it chose me. Then I'll fight for it. For you. Would you die for me, Joe?" He didn't hesitate. Yes. Will's ship cut through the water like a blade. At his side stood Silva, the poison archer, and Moro, once Joe's confidant, now a traitor, sold to the highest bidder. "The mermaid has grown fond of him," Moro said, spitting the words like venom. "She'll protect him." Goodwill sneered. "That makes killing her all the more meaningful." Back on the Fertina, Yelesi Lisa climbed aboard. Her voice had gifted the crew a temporary enchantment to breathe beneath the waves, a gift that would allow them to reach the Coral Deep undetected. But it came with a cost. "Each of you must give a memory," Lisa said, "to fuel the magic." Tilly offered her first invention, Rico, a memory of his sister. Boren, the face of a lost love. Joe, his mother's lullaby. In return, the ocean accepted them, and down they went. Coral Deep was breathtaking. towers of glowing kelp, streets paved with pearl, schools of fish darting like silver arrows. But peace would not last. The Iron Widow descended like a shadow. Cutter, Will's dark priest, unleashed magic that boiled the water. Crag shattered coral towers with every step. Lisa led the defense, singing a war hymn that summoned sea serpents from ancient trenches. Joe fought like a storm, unleashed blade. Flashing, heart-burning, he dueled Moro in the throne chamber, the clash of steel ringing like funeral bells. Tilly and Finn activated coral mechanisms Lisa had taught them, turning the palace itself into a weapon. And then Lisa stood before. "Will, you wanted the stone?" she said. "Here it is." She pressed her palm to her chest. Light exploded. The Tidal Stone had lived inside her all along. Will lunged, blade raised. Joe intercepted. Their swords collided, each blow a storm surge. "You left me to die," Will shouted. "You chose power over brotherhood," Joe roared. In the end, it was Lisa who stopped it. With tears in her eyes, she sang one last note, a song not of war, but of endings. The sea itself rose to obey. The Iron Widow cracked in two. Cutter was pulled into the depths by the very darkness he worshipped. Crag vanished beneath falling rubble. Moro fled, his cowardice saving his life yet again. Will was gone, and Joe was sinking. Lisa caught him. "Stay with me," she begged. He opened his eyes, weak but smiling. "I always will." Fertina Yelesi sails no more. Joe and Lisa now rule the coral deep, a pirate and a princess, united by love and sea. The tides whisper their story still, of a love that could not drown, of a heart that never sank, of the drowned heart and the legend it became. But legends, like the tides, are never still. Though the Iron Widow was shattered and will vanish into the abyss, the sea remembers everything, and it never forgets. Months passed in peace. Coral Deep healed, its towers were rebuilt, and its waters grew warm again. Joe, once a scourge of the surface, had become something new, a protector, a prince, a man in love. And Lisa, once burdened with prophecy and fear, now sang songs of joy, of mornings spent drifting hand in hand, of stars viewed from beneath the waves. Yet darkness stirred in the Mariana Rift, a chasm deeper than time, where things lost and cursed Slumbered. Silva survived, wounded but burning with vengeance. She descended into the rift, clutching a shard of the Tidal Stone, a cursed splinter Lisa had cast off to seal the final spell. There, in the black silence, she called upon the deep ones, creatures older than the mermaids, older than men. She offered the shard, she offered her soul, and she offered Joe above. Joe began to feel something change. The sea grew restless. The currents became colder. Fish vanished. Then came the whispers. Not Lisa's, something darker, hungrier. Lisa noticed it too. "The stone has a twin," she said one night, lying beside Joe beneath the glowing jellygrass fields. Its echo was never destroyed. It's calling. Calling to who? Joe asked. "To anyone who listens," she said, and her voice trembled. The next morning, Finn discovered maps altering themselves, coastlines redrawing, reefs shifting. "That's impossible," he muttered. Tilly's instruments cracked from inside. Rico, plagued by dreams of drowning, began to mutter a name in his sleep. Narthun. Lisa went silent. One night, she vanished. Joe found a single shell on their shared altar. Inside it, her voice, "Forgive me. I must face what I began." He didn't wait. He summoned his crew. Now, scattered across outposts and reefs, Finn returned with kelp parchments from the seers. Rico arrived, teeth clenched, fists scarred. Tilly brought a new invention, a diving orb, pressurized for the depths no light touched. Borin came last, saying nothing, but carrying Joe's old blade. They followed Lisa's trail into the trench. The descent was madness. The ocean turned black. Light died. Creatures passed that had no name. Time slipped. Finn grew older. Tilly forgot her own name for hours. Yet they pressed on. At the chasm's edge, they found it. A palace of bones. There, on a throne of fossilized gods, sat Silva, and beside her, Will, barely alive, barely human. The shard had twisted him. His eyes bled salt. His skin gleamed like dead coral. Lisa knelt before them, bound in kelp made of shadow. Silva smiled. Love, so predictable. Joe stepped forward. "Let her go." "No," Silva whispered. "You'll watch her drown." But the stone within Lisa pulsed. Even chained, even silenced, she was the sea. And Joe was still a pirate. The crew attacked. Finn cast runes of reversal. Tilly's orb unleashed light. Rico broke chains with fire coral gauntlets. Borin leaped into the maw of a beast to save a child mermaid. And Joe faced Will once more. But Will was lost. "This isn't you," Joe said. "We were brothers." "I am more than I was," Will hissed. "The sea showed me." "No," Joe whispered. "Lisa did that for me." Their blades crossed again. The sea howled. Silva screamed a curse, and Lisa sang. Her song tore through the trench, binding Will's soul in mercy, sealing Silva into the stone, calming the deep ones. The palace cracked. "Go," she told Joe. "Not without you. You'll drown." "Then let me drown beside you." But she kissed him once and pushed him toward the light. He rose, clutching the shard. The trench collapsed. Silence returned. Days passed. No sign of Lisa. The crew mourned. The sea fell still. Then one night, as the stars blinked over coral, deep the waves parted, and Lisa rose, alive, changed. Her tail shimmered with new power. Her eyes were older. She said nothing, just held Joe's hand. He understood. They had won, but the sea had taken its toll. Now, Joe and Lisa are guardians of the deeps, feared by monsters and worshipped by sirens. They no longer chase treasure. They protect it. They no longer run from fate. They guide it. The tale of the drowned heart was thought to be over. But sailors whisper that sometimes, when storms brew over the golden reefs, a ship made of coral and iron rises, captained by a man with fire in his heart and a song in his soul. Beside him, a queen of waves, whose eyes hold the fury of the tide and the memory of love that conquered the abyss. Their names, Joe and Lisa, their legend, unfinished. Asterisk, but love, even one born of shipwreck and song, cannot escape the price of destiny. It began with a dream. Joe stood on the deck of the Fertina Yelesi, once more, not beneath the sea, but atop it. The sun hung low, the ocean gleamed, golden, and far in the distance, a tower of light pierced the sky. Lisa was beside him, her hand in his. She smiled, then vanished. The sea cracked open, and from it rose a voice, not words. Lisa was already gone. She had been called, the stone within her. Now fully awakened, had begun to remember its purpose, and it was not merely to command tides, it was a beacon, a seed of something older, a remnant of the first ocean, the world that had existed before time, before life. The Tidal Stone was never meant to be wielded by mortals. It was meant to awaken Thouser, the sleeper below, and it already had. Joe knew where she had gone. The Maelstrom Gate, a storm that had no center, a place where compasses failed, where waves flowed upward and time ran sideways. A myth even among legends. But Joe no longer hesitated. He gathered his crew again. What remained of them, Finn, had gone blind, his eyes burned by the runes, but his mind had never been clearer. I see with different eyes now. It'll find her, she promised. Rico had aged gray, streaking his hair, but his arms were as strong as ever. For her, he said simply. Boren had not spoken since the rift, but when Joe called, he stood, and so they sailed, not above the waves this time, but within them. The sea no longer rejected them. It parted. The Maelstrom Gate was not a place, but a memory made physical, a storm locked in time. Within it, fragments of lost ships drifted like bones, and echoes of voices long dead filled the water like whispers in a graveyard. The stone within her pulsed like a second heart, and surrounding her, Thal's, its voice, the undertow. It spoke through the pressure in their lungs, through the tremble of their bones. She is the vessel. Joe pushed forward. She is the bridge. Then I'll burn the bridge, Joe growled. He drew the blade given to him by the whispering serpents, a blade forged from silence itself. It swallowed. It showed him futures. Lisa, crowned in coral, ruling an ocean devoid of men. Himself, alone, old, forgotten. Rico dying, Tilly breaking, Finn lost. You cannot win, the ocean said. Joe smiled. I already did. Lisa's eyes opened. She saw Joe, and she remembered herself. The stone pulsed once, then shattered. The ocean screamed. Thouser, Convulsed. Lisa fell into Joe's arms, and light exploded. When they awoke, they were lying on a beach neither knew. The sea was still. The sky was soft. Finn was gone, but his map was in Joe's hand, now complete, leading nowhere and everywhere. Tilly was beside them, asleep with her tools, rusted from overuse. Rico's sword was planted in the sand, a memorial. Boren stood at the shoreline, watching the tide, still silent. Lisa reached for Joe's hand. He took it. The maelstrom was gone. The gate was sealed, but something had changed. They were no longer part of the sea. They were above it now, human. The tidal stone was broken. The magic had passed. They were no longer gods or legends, but they had each other. And in the end, that was the truest power. And so the sea rests, but sailors still speak of them, of a ship that sometimes appears on the farthest edge of the horizon, made of driftwood, and dream of a woman whose voice calms storms, of a man whose blade once silenced a god. They are not dead, they are not lost, they are free. The legend of the drowned heart is no longer a tale of war and song. It is a love story, one that, like the tide, always finds its way home. Time passed, not in days or years, but in tides, soft, patient, eternal. Joe and Lisa lived in the quiet now, far from the thrones of coral and the fury of ancient storms. They built a home near the whispering shoals, where the waves were gentle and the sky knew how to stay silent. Fishermen sometimes saw them walking along the shore, barefoot, hands clasped. eyes distant, as if still listening to a song only they could hear. But legends don't die. Then came the frozen birds, seagulls falling from the sky, their wings tipped in frost. The ocean, once warm and blue, began to pale. Ice bloomed along the coastlines, unnatural and fast. Lisa stood one morning by the water's edge and whispered, "This is not the sea I know." Joe had already felt it in his bones, the same ache he'd known before the great wars. Trouble, a cold knot of nature, but of vengeance. The Ice Lords had returned, long before the mermaids. Before the Tidal Stone, the seas had belonged to them, rulers of frost and hunger, cast into the polar shadows by the Sun Queen. But now, something had broken the seal that held them, and it hadn't happened on its own. In a cave sealed in blue crystal, beneath the northern fang, a man stirred. He had lost his ship, his crew, his soul, but not his purpose. "He took the sea from me," he growled. "Now I'll take everything." From him, he reached out, and the Ice Lords answered, "Far south." Lisa began to change. The sea no longer spoke to her the same way. "It's not that it's angry," she told Joe one night. "It's afraid." Joe called Tilly. She came in a new airship, one powered by wind and light, her own design. "Rico's gone," she said before anything else. Finn's maps, preserved in wax-sealed cases, began shifting again. And it was moving south. Lisa turned to Joe. "He's still alive." Joe didn't ask who she meant. He already knew, so they went. Not in a ship this time, but in Tilly's flying vessel, the Cloud Skimmer. Its sails spread like wings of a sky manta, its hull made of driftwood and star metal. Joe, Lisa, Tilly, and Boren, the last of the old crew, as they flew north, the world changed beneath them. Islands disappeared beneath snow. Whales turned to ghosts beneath the glassy ice. The stars blinked out one by one, and then Frosthaven rose before them, a continent of ice, a fortress of memory. And above it all, a tower made of frozen time, crowned in black. Lisa touched the air and recoiled. "There's no sea here, only death." And then the sky cracked. Will stood atop the tower, cloaked in frost, eyes glowing like broken moonlight. His voice boomed like thunder over still water. "You drowned me in love. Now I return in ruin." He raised a hand, and the ocean froze for miles. The battle was not between ships now, or swords. It was between past and future. Lisa sang. But the frost choked her voice. Tilly fired thunderbolts from the Cloud Skimmer, but they shattered on the walls. Boren leaped into the heart of the storm, carving a path with burning blades. And Joe faced Will once more, but Will was no longer flesh. He had become ice incarnate, kept alive only by hatred and forgotten names. "I should have been king," he hissed. "You never wanted the sea," Joe replied. "You wanted to own it. That's why it left you." Their blades met. Old wounds reopened. Old truths surfaced. And above them all, Lisa did something she had never done before. She stopped singing. She simply spoke. "The sea is not yours, Will, and it never was." And she stepped forward, placed her hand on the ice, and forgave him. The tower cracked. Will screamed, and Frosthaven began to fall. Joe grabbed Lisa. Tilly steered the Cloud Skimmer through collapsing storms and vanishing glaciers. Boren leaped onto the deck at the last second, carrying something glowing, the heart of ice now melting, and behind them, Frosthaven sank into the sea, not defeated, but remembered. They returned home. But home had changed again. Lisa's songs returned, but softer. Joe's beard had gone gray. Boran finally spoke. It's over. Watching the skies, knowing that legends don't end. They drift, they rise, they return. The sea was calm. To calm. Weeks passed since Frosthaven fell into the deep. But silence itself had weight now, as if the ocean were holding its breath. Joe sat on a driftwood bench beneath a moonlit arch of coral, his blade, now worn, rusted, at the hilt, rested by his side. Lisa walked barefoot through tide pools, fingers trailing over still water, her eyes distant. "You feel it too," she said one night. Joe nodded. "Like something's waiting to hatch." And it was. The heart of ice, which Tilly had sealed in a chamber of quartz and silver runes, had begun to pulse. At first faintly, then steadily. It no longer looked frozen. It shimmered, alive. Rhythm like a heartbeat echoed from its core. Then came the dreams. Lisa dreamed of a child, cradled in her arms, but with silver eyes and hair like mist. The child opened its mouth to cry, and instead sang a melody no living creature should know. Joe dreamed of the Fertina Yelesi, adrift in a blood-red sea, its sails torn by invisible winds. At the helm stood Lisa, but not as he knew her. She wore a crown of thorns and coral, and her eyes were hollow. Then came the voice. It spoke, not aloud, but inside them, inside everything. Balance is broken. Finn had once said the Tidal Stone and the heart of ice were twins, not opposites, but complements. One gave life, the other silence. One sang, the other listened. Now one was gone. Lisa, shaken, finally admitted the truth. When I shattered the stone, I may have undone something older than the ocean. That night, the first storm without wind struck. Clouds gathered silently. The moon disappeared. Fish leaped from the water, only to vanish mid-air. Time twisted. Boren aged a decade in minutes. Tilly's instruments screamed. The waves no longer moved with gravity. The sea had stopped obeying. The storm passed and left a child behind, floating in a shell of crystal. At the shore, no one knew how he got there. No one knew his name, but Lisa did. She picked him up and held him close, whispering the name she had heard in her dreams, Kael. His skin was warm like sunlight. His breath smelled of salt and violets, but his eyes, silver and endless, belonged to something beyond. Mortal life. Tilly ran tests. His pulse echoed with harmonic frequencies. His tears froze in midair. And when he looked into the heart of ice, it stopped pulsing, just for a moment, as if waiting for him to speak. Joe didn't trust him at first, but the child smiled, reached for his blade, touched it, and it turned to water in his hands. Kael grew fast. By the time the next moon cycle passed, he looked nearly 10. By the third, 15, not just in body, in memory. He began speaking in languages no one had taught him. He knew the names of shipwrecks, long forgotten. He sang in tones that bent metal and soothed sharks. Lisa was torn between love and dread. Joe knew what Kael was becoming, a bridge between sea and sky, ice and fire, magic and man. But others had noticed. From the eastern seas came whispers of a new pirate order, the Veiled Tide, led by a sorceress named Mira the Pale, claiming the boy as her celestial right. She was a prophet of old gods, forgotten by time, now returned by Kael's birth. And she was not alone. She wielded the obsidian compass, a relic older than even the Tidal Stone. It pointed not north, but toward power, toward Kael. Lisa pleaded with Joe. We have to protect him. He's not a weapon. Joe sharpened his blade. That's exactly why they want him. So they prepared. Boren trained Kael in swordsmanship, though Kael barely needed it. Tilly fitted the cloud skimmer with storm sails, ready for pursuit. And Joe stood at the old altar, praying to a sea that no longer answered. Then, one night, Kael vanished, gone without a trace. A single feather lay on the bed, not from a bird, but from a leviathan. Hawk creatures that hadn't been seen since before the first storm. Lisa collapsed. Joe roared. Tilly tracked a resonance pattern in the sky, and far to the east, in the eye of a storm made of mirrors and lightning, Mira the Pale stood on the deck of a crystal ship, the Star Wound, and looked into Kael's eyes. You were never theirs, she whispered. You were always ours.